Welcome to FemLead, the podcast on female leadership and role models. This show aims to inspire and equip you with the tools you need to navigate your career plans. FemLead brings inspiring career perspectives and strategies to guide your path to success. Your host, Alexandra, will interview role models on new exciting topics with each episode. If you like what you hear, give us a review and subscribe to the show on your preferred streaming platform. Enjoy.
Hello. I'm taking this space to share some news from our community to all of you based in Copenhagen, Denmark. If you are based in Copenhagen, hear me out. FemLead Podcast is super thrilled and honored to host a new in-person event in Copenhagen on June 6th, starting 8 a.m., so a morning session, on networking and women in consulting. We have the pleasure of collaborating with Boston Consulting Group, and together we will be taking you through the exciting space of management consulting. We aim to have a morning event during which you will have the opportunity to hear from a BCG leader who will share their personal experience working in management consulting. You will gain a unique perspective on the challenges and opportunities that come with navigating this thrilling field and learn valuable tips to help you excel in your career. This is an event open to anyone, whether you're looking to break into the industry, seeking to enhance your skills, or you are a senior leader looking for new perspective. We really welcome you to join us for this fruitful discussion. So some details: the event will take place on June 6th from 8 a.m. To 10 a.m. and we'll be providing breakfast to get your day off to a great start. The agenda includes a 30-minute speaker session followed by a 30-minute Q&A session where you can ask all your questions and discuss any sort of topics that you wanted with a leader in management consulting, and then a 1-hour networking opportunity to connect with other women in the industry. This is a really incredible opportunity. We're very grateful and really excited to be collaborating with BCG, Boston Consulting Group, and you will be gaining some very valuable insights through the line of management consultant and really connect with like-minded women in the industry. So if you have any questions or curiosity about the industry, we really welcome you to this event. You need to RSVP. So RSVP now through our link in bio or go to our website to secure your spot, and let's delve into the world of management consulting together. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope to see you in person soon if you're based in Copenhagen. And now enjoy the podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of FemLead Podcast. I'm very excited to be introducing the next guest. She's a friend of the podcast. We've met in person in Sweden a few months ago. She's super inspirational and such a kind person. I'm really convinced that you will love this interview with her. Ellie King is the co-founder of EqualIT, a mission-driven business supporting organizations globally to recruit inclusive teams, whilst also combining coaching on building equitable culture. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is in their DNA. Community is deeply rooted in the foundation of EqualIT as well, and since launching, they have enjoyed meaningful collaborations with Nordic Women in Tech Awards, Women in Tech Sweden, PyLadies, WomenWhoCode, and HackYourFuture, just to name a few. Ellie is an incredible passionate person, and she shares a lot about inspiration, career development, and inclusive equity. As the host of EqualIT's Equal Inspired podcast, she aims to amplify the voices of women and non-dominant groups doing amazing work in tech to create relatable role models, because representation matters, and that is all that we stand for as well. Today we discuss Ellie's entrepreneurial career, but also her view on recruitment practices, the need for more representation across industries, and how she sees career progression based on EqualIT's focus. I invite you all to listen to this episode and enjoy Ellie's fantastic speech. You'll really like her presentation and the way she communicates. So without further ado, let's welcome Ellie King to FemLead Podcast. Hello, Ellie. Welcome to FemLead Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. How are you today?
Firstly, it's such a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so much for welcoming me on the podcast. I am doing great. I'm really having a positive week, and I just want to say I'm so excited to be speaking with you. I love everything that you're doing, the energy you have to positively impact the community. So I'm very excited to dive in today.
Oh, thank you so much, Ellie. We were just speaking before I started the recording that I wish I was feeling a little bit better as well. But as it happens, the change in temperature here in Copenhagen made me feel a little bit sick. So I hope that for the listeners is not a big impediment. We really wanted to bring forward to you this interview. And Ellie has been an inspiration for me. She really helped with different pieces of advice throughout the last few months. So I really wanted to spotlight her role, her career, but also EqualIT. So Ellie, let's deep dive into the first question that I prepared, which is, what is EqualIT? Tell us more about the setup you have in the company, but also how do you decide to start the company?
Sure. So what is EqualIT? Well, looking at what it is that we support organizations globally to recruit inclusive teams. And we also complement this with coaching with businesses we support around how we can build more equitable cultures, how we can encourage more psychological safety, and also how we can enhance belonging, because that is so important. It's a key ingredient, belonging, for any kind of diversity or inclusion to flourish and to thrive. So from a business commercial perspective, this is the core of what we do in our focus. But looking at it through the other lens, community is absolutely engraved in everything that we do. It's the foundations of EqualIT and the reason why we established this business. So we really look to support organizations, nonprofits, communities to really give inspiration, share knowledge, coaching, mentorship on how you can thrive in a career, support nonprofits who are working towards building more inclusive cultures, and really try and give back in any way that we can. And that's through workshops, collaborations at events, speaking engagements at events, anything community-oriented. We are there. We are signing up for that because we want to give back. We want to make a difference. So putting the magnifying glass, I guess, on some of the wins and successes of our business, last year, around 85% of the placements that we did successfully with organizations in tech teams were people from diverse backgrounds. And, that's across many different layers, whether that be gender, neurodiversity, race, sexual orientation. There's so many layers to this. And from the community piece, we have been so honored to mentor over 55 underrepresented folks working in tech, and also enjoy a lot of community collaborations with Nordic Women in Tech Awards, which is where we've had the pleasure of meeting Alexandra. Super happy about that. But Women in Tech Sweden, HackYourFuture Denmark, the list is endless. We really value giving back and sharing inspiration. So it's combining inclusive recruitment, coaching, and then community engraved in everything that we do. And thinking about why do we do that? Why is it so important? Well, it's a combination of a few different things. Personal experiences, actually, growing up and feeling, I guess, in some ways, the burden of feeling like a minority in some environments and situations. And I'm sure we can dive into that in a bit more detail later down the line, Alexandra. Also, really experiencing the power of allyship firsthand led to building EqualIT to try and encourage this more throughout the community. And that ally who has been a big advocate for me over the past 6-7 years, I'm lucky enough to call my co-founder today, Jonathan. And, it's really thinking about the statistics, the data that we have on why it's so important that we're working towards building more inclusive cultures. The study shows that 41% of individuals from the LGBTQ+, when they're seeking a job, they would not apply at a company if they lacked diversity. And, belonging, when you feel like you can belong in a business, you're 6 times more engaged in your work. And racially and ethnically diverse companies perform 35% better together. So the data, the stats that are all there, and also that internal feeling of experiences, personal experiences, and seeing the challenges of so many other individuals in this community, in this space, and also the challenges of organizations, right? Yes, we can build a diverse team, but the retention is the challenge. So that's a little bit about EqualIT and what we're doing and our focus.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Ellie. On your last point, with another podcast guest, we discussed the fact that it takes up to 2 years to get the investment in recruitment that you've made for a new employee. And at the time I was thinking, oh my God, 2 years? I mean, we are kind of in this space right now, or at least some generations are, that you should change your job every 2 years. So that means that at the break-even point, you barely gave back to the company, in a way, the investment that they have made to hire you. Obviously, if you look from your perspective, slash, what would it mean for the company? And yet, there are many stories, and I'm sure that this is also something you are more aware of. But I know from my own network that, I have friends who moved after 6 to 12 months to a new job. And in the beginning, I mean, it's surprising, at least for me, because I've never done such a fast switch in my career the same way. Maybe I was younger and less involved in a let's say, more managerial role, but generally, it's not something that has characterized my career. But I actually know a couple of people that have done this super fast-paced moving setup of different roles and experimenting different careers. Do you think this has anything to do with, well, culture on one hand, but also on satisfaction? Are there any indications of how we can figure out the best fit, but also the best way to engage colleagues so that, it makes a good relationship for both parties? Because I'm sure that also for the person departing and starting a new job, getting used to a new setup also takes time. So in some instances, it's an interesting discussion to have. How can we make it work for both parties? What do you think?
Yeah, great points that you mentioned. And, typically what we tend to find when somebody wants to leave after 6 months, maybe, it's more so now, unfortunately, because of the layoffs that are going on, in the market, which is super upsetting to see. Also, promises haven't been kept internally in the business that they thought they were joining. We see the problem quite often where companies will say that they really value an inclusive culture. But then when it comes to somebody actually joining the business, the processes aren't inclusive. They're not feeling like they're belonging in the business, and the onboarding experience hasn't really been what they had hoped. Or it could be that they are almost sold the dream in terms of the role that they might receive. And it turns out that it's a different story when they're in there and they're not really being as challenged. And when we work with individuals, we really try to, I guess, avoid that from happening by having really in-depth relationships with the businesses we support, really getting to know the insides, the outs of them, seeing past case studies of employees who have come through, interviewing employees and hearing about their own experiences about onboarding. And then from the individual's perspective who's joining the business, we take such a long time to really get to know that individual and to make sure that we understand their non-negotiables, what their why is, what makes their heart sing about what they do. And then we really tailor that and customize that to each individual business. So from our perspective, we try and do everything we can to stop that from happening. Of course, we can never stop it all of the time. People are humans, we have emotions, and environments can be different. But it's really about, I would say, from the get-go, from the onboarding, making sure that you are allowing these people to feel like they can belong in this business and bringing everybody into that. So somebody that we work quite closely with had a really cool concept where every person that in the team that they're going to be joining, they write a short paragraph about them, their interests, like a real personal thing, something not necessarily about their skill set and their background. And people are able to read that and get to know these people a lot more deeper before they've even joined the business, which can also help just to feel like you are a bit more comfortable in that setup and that environment.
Great. Thank you so much, Ellie. I have a lot of follow-up questions because I think your knowledge on today's market requirements and also expectations, this is something I'm hearing from your answers, that maybe there is a lack of expectations being fulfilled on both ends, but especially, on the candidate's end when it comes to the role that they are looking forward to starting sometimes, and that you actually spend a lot of time discussing that with companies that you work with, which is absolutely fantastic because then, of course, you increase chances of satisfaction and retention. And on that note, can you tell us what are the 3 skills that you believe are important to invest in building in today's market requirements? What do you suggest companies to be aware of, but also candidates to kind of maybe also share with potential companies?
Great question. Really great question. So I feel, first and foremost, personal brand as an individual is such an important skill to use and to understand and to get familiar with. because building on your personal brand as an individual, you're going to also be able to attract so much more opportunity to come your way. So if you are a candidate and you are quite active in speaking engagements, active in your tech community, seen to be sharing knowledge, sharing inspiration, and volunteering your time to do these things, that is really appreciated by companies. And that's also how you're going to be able to stand out in what is quite a crowded job market at the moment. It's also a great way to complement your actual CV and cover letter if you still are using that to apply to a business. You could actually say, hey, look, here's my track record of everything I've been doing. This is my personal brand. This is me. This is my focus. So personal branding, I would say, is key, super, super important. And, just to give an example of that, personal brand is something that I really decided to throw everything into about 3.5 years ago. And to be honest, off the back of that, it led me to become the co-founder of EqualIT. It's led to so many amazing speaking engagements and to being on today's podcast. And I genuinely believe without working on the personal brand, these things would not have happened. So personal brand is super, super important. It also enables you to be trusted, right? You're seen as a trusted individual. You can be trusted to do the job in a very good way. So from a candidate perspective, personal brand, but also, from a business perspective, that's equally as important. Working on your brand as a company, showing that you are actually walking the talk when it comes to your core values, and that you can give candidates who are coming through the interview process case studies, evidence, examples of how you're walking the talk. If you value diversity and inclusion, are you involved in the community? If so, are you vlogging the work you're doing in the community so you can give people an insight into the day in the life of the things you're doing? Really show people that you care about these things and that you're going the extra mile. So personal branding. Secondly, I would say the ability to build meaningful connections. Now, in other words, that's seen as networking. But I like to reframe that because I think that networking can feel really transactional. And for some people, networking is very daunting because there's that stereotype that you have to be super extroverted to be a great networker. And if you're introverted, you're never going to build meaningful connections. And that really, really isn't the case. So I first of all recommend listeners who are struggling around the idea of networking to reframe what that means to you. So like I say, building meaningful connections. And why is this important? Well, it enables you to, again, build trust when you're interviewing at organizations. It enables you to have really open-ended conversations. If you have the ability to build a meaningful connection, you're more encouraged to ask meaningful questions when you're in an interview scenario also. And you can also utilize that to build meaningful connections with people who are already working in that business before maybe you're going into an interview with them, to try and get some inside scoops, some advice, some tips on what type of profile this company is looking for and how might you succeed and thrive. Also, another way of doing that is building a meaningful connection with somebody in a business that you want to work for that could then lead to getting a referral from them into your potential business that you want to work at. So there's so many possibilities through building meaningful connections. And then I would also say the ability to communicate your why and to sell your story effectively, the value that you can bring to a business and understanding your story. And I guess that comes really with self-reflection, which is super, super important, but at the same time, super tough to do. It takes quite a lot, I feel, to be able to look in the mirror and to pick yourself apart and to think, okay, this is an area of weakness for me. I really need to work on this. How can I do that? It's the ability to actually take on constructive feedback as well and not take it as a personal attack or feel very defensive. So that ability to self-reflect and always reflect on your why. Why are you doing these things? Why is it important to you? How is that going to impact a business that you're potentially going to be working at? If you can understand that and continually reflect, you'll be able to articulate yourself and sell yourself to a business because, let's face it, in an interview, that is what we're having to do so much better. So those are my 3. I love it.
It's also very cool that you've mentioned the personal reflection part, because I think we are not really used to discussing this point of view when it comes to skills. Like, is that a skill for you to, in helping you move forward? But it is. I mean, like you said, the way you react to situations says a lot about yourself. And it also says a lot about how other people can work with you. I want to ask, as a next question, when it comes to women empowerment and taking charge of your journey, you really are a role model, because you started your career as an entrepreneur in the last few years. And you've mentioned Jonathan, your co-founder, as one of the allies within your field. Tell us, what is some of the feedback that you receive from shining light on stories of really great IT professionals, but also some of the not so fun data on the lack of representation in tech? What can you tell us about the information that you present as well as part of EqualIT's setup?
Sure. Great question. So the feedback that we receive from shining the spotlight, from a personal perspective, having people approach me and genuinely being thankful, like, wow, this story that you shared, this has inspired me to take a course within public speaking, or it's enabled me to believe more in myself and my strengths, and to have that ability to self-reflect and to learn from any adversity that comes our way. So just more from like a personal fulfillment perspective on why we do these things, it's hearing comments like that. It's igniting that spark within one person. If I'm doing that for one person, then we're doing our job, and we're, this is a great thing. We're on the right track. So feedback has always been really positive, really receptive in terms of what we do and our mission. And I'm really pleased about that, because it's something that truly is engraved in our DNA. And for me personally, it's such a personal thing, personal connection, as it is with my co-founder, Jonathan. But in terms of actually some of the data on representation, I mean, I can't say it enough. It is so, so, so important. So actually, a few weeks ago, well, last month now, we had the pleasure of attending and being a part of the Black Girls in Tech Fest in London. An incredible day. It's a huge job fair for the community, and Black Girls in Tech as a community have over 20,000 members, and they really encourage community. They provide resources for learning and opportunity. So being there, we actually had a stand, and it just felt so incredible to be in a room, to see so many wonderful women who are thriving, who want to learn, who want to get involved in tech and have that passion. Because if we look at some of the stats, 0.7% of the tech sector in the UK comprises of Black women. And that is just so shocking, and something we need to continue working towards. And this is why representation is so important, and why we want to be able to help communities in any way we can, and give career advice, mentor, help. There's a statistic as well, and I mentioned this on my talk at Nordic Women in Tech Awards, Alexandra, but women leave the tech industry at a 45% higher rate than men. And I truly believe that that is because of the issues we have with representation. It's that whole concept of you can't be what you can't see, right? I know for me, growing up, when I started my job in recruitment 10 years ago, I have never had a female leader, a female boss, female director, CEO. I have never had that or experienced that. And that always left me feeling like I couldn't be what I couldn't see. But thankfully, I had an amazing ally. I reflected on myself and found that inner confidence. But it just goes to show the impact that that can have on people. If we're not seeing people around us, other women, for example, in these leadership roles, unconsciously in our mind, it almost plays into, well, can we get to that point? I'm surrounded by guys here. Is this a space for me? Can I thrive? Can I actually achieve my career goals in this business? Another statistic around representation is, I believe as of 2023, I think this is more focused on the US, but women hold 26.7% of technology jobs across the board. So unfortunately, statistically and data-wise, we still have a very, very, very long way to go. It's improving in some ways, and that's great. And we have to celebrate those wins and get excited about it. But we have to also be really realistic that there's still so much to do. And it's that whole idea that this work that we do is never enough. There's not an actual end point here. It's we need to continually be doing all of these things to the point where we don't have to worry about these shocking statistics and data points.
Absolutely. Super happy that you shared that, because I feel the need for reminders on how the actual data looks like, it's important. Otherwise, we kind of tend to forget and we say, oh, but we're doing a lot of activities. Yeah, but the aim of all of these activities is that it improves some of the data from across the board that we see. And if we don't have that result, then we should just keep pushing. We're not going to solve the world's problems by creating a podcast, but we can definitely support the initiatives and spotlight the role models who invest their lives and careers into these missions, right? So very happy that you've shared some numbers with us as well. I want to move into the story of your entrepreneurial journey, because I'm very inspired by the way you've decided to start EqualIT. You say you have co-founders, and I know that you also have sources of inspiration that made you go on this path. So I wanted to ask you, what does entrepreneurship mean to you? What made you decide to start the company, but also did someone inspire you to?
Great question. So what does entrepreneurship mean to me? Personally, it's the desire to make a difference, to really create meaningful impact, and to build a long-lasting legacy, to try and solve a problem that, to be honest, is quite personal to you. If you've been through something, if you've experienced it yourself, you can put yourself in the shoes of some of that audience that you're trying to target. Just focusing on being a woman, for example. It's coming out of the comfort zone, following that passion, but also being on this path of continuous learning, this journey where there's highs, there's lows, but that's all part of the process and all part of the fun. It's being able to really make an impact and to be a fearless learner. That's what entrepreneurship means to me. And in terms of the inspiration behind EqualIT and really what led to that, I would say Jonathan, my co-founder, was a huge inspiration behind us joining forces and becoming co-founders and launching this organization. So I've actually had the pleasure of working with Jonathan for 6 years prior to launching EqualIT in a few different businesses. And when we first met, we really clicked. We're very similar, very like-minded in terms of our values, in terms of what's important to us, and in terms of just really wanting to make a positive impact and change on the communities in the tech space. And to be honest, in general. So that's always been a really great collaboration that we've had. Jonathan also had been, like I said, an incredible ally of mine. So if you was to tell that Ellie a while ago that she was going to be a co-founder, she would never have believed you. I found myself in a position where I was overthinking and doubting my abilities, nervous to present ideas in a room out of fear of judgments or being completely ignored. I truly felt like I didn't belong. And there was a moment where I was ready to leave this industry that I truly love, where I build meaningful connections, where I support more equitable opportunity in tech. But I was ready to leave because, I felt like I didn't belong. But actually, one of the key things that got me through that time was experiencing that power of allyship. Jonathan, who was the upstander, who called out behaviors that weren't okay, who helped to reignite that spark within me to help me fight and challenge my inner imposter. And he still does that today, because the imposter syndrome likes to come and creep up on my shoulder every now and again when we're doing new things or doing speaking engagements and stuff like that. So Jonathan was a big inspiration on why I'm a co-founder today in EqualIT, but also launching EqualIT in October 2021. This was just after real intense COVID, right? And I know for many people, COVID was a real time of self-reflection and thinking really about, what do you want to be known for? Why are you doing these things? Just having these real deep internal look at ourselves and wanting to have a bigger purpose, a bigger mission. And for me personally, I experienced some really hard loss in a very short space of time. And I'll put my hands up. I was actually very fortunate prior to that to not experience any kind of real loss. And I know I'm very lucky and very privileged to have that for the lifespan that I have so far. But I lost 3 people. So it was 3 very different experiences of grief. And it was a really tough time, really difficult. I lost my sister quite suddenly when she was 21. I lost my granddad, who had been battling an illness, who was a true role model in my life. Very much the motivation on, I guess, having that entrepreneurial spirit, and somebody who was just super, super close and I would always go to for advice in career, in life. The wise man, I like to call him. And then not long after that, I actually lost my best friend, who was battling a brain tumor for 3 years. So that for me was that real moment of, as cheesy as this sounds, this life we have is so short. You don't know what tomorrow could bring. You really don't know what tomorrow can bring. And time is the most valuable commodity that we have. And I want to be using my time to combine something I've been doing for 10 years, for a very long time, but also combining that with a real underlying passion to make a difference and to make a change. And as hard as that time was, I look back on that time now and I think that actually helped to shape who I am today. And it helped to give me that motivation to become a co-founder today, because I use that as my motivation when days are tough. I think about these people and why I'm doing this mission and why I want to make such a positive impact. I think of them and I think, I'm doing this every day to make these people proud of me. And that motivation is something that I truly believe will never stop me from working towards this mission and for just continually investing in the journey at EqualIT, because that's the purpose, right? It's to help the community, it's to help others who have been affected and impacted by DE&I related issues. But from a personal perspective, there's a lot of motivation there to make people proud who aren't here today. And I hope that they are looking down and proud of what we've achieved thus far. And that's a big motivation on the inspiration behind EqualIT, I would say also.
Thank you so much, Ellie. I'm a bit speechless. I wasn't expecting that. So let's take a small second. I think you emphasize something very important here that everybody's taking with them. So we will move forward and we will start talking about also your lessons through this journey, because I'm sure that you learned a lot. So one of my next questions is, when it comes to advice, of course, considering all of the learnings and the journey that you've been through, for future entrepreneurs or for entrepreneurs listening that are at the beginning of their journey, what did you find the hardest? And what was, if you may say, surprisingly easy in your journey?
Okay. Well, it's been a journey, a really fun, a really enjoyable journey, and genuinely waking up each day energized and so excited to make a difference. Some of the challenges I would say initially is that mindset shift. So doing technical recruitment for 10 years previously, it was always me as an individual, in a sense, kind of you as an entrepreneur of your own desk. But recruitment was your full-time job, right? Although I did a lot of external work and volunteering time for the community piece even back then. So it's that mindset shift of then wearing many different hats and being very open to learning so much more. So Jonathan and I really complement one another, and I'm really thankful for this. From an operational standpoint, Jonathan is incredible. And then I would say I'm more so the marketing, creative side of the business. So we complement one another, luckily, but it's getting, again, all of those skills and using Google, being Google's best friend for quite a while, really being a student of life and continuously learning and growing. So that was something that was a challenge at first, just that mindset shift that I'm going to have to be juggling many different plates, and I still want to be investing time as much as we can in the community piece, we still have to be in some ways generating some kind of money and income because of bills and life and general things, right? So finding that balance, I would say, was quite tough as well, because we also have the Equal Inspired podcast that we do, and that's a real labor of love, but it's something that we invest, to shine the spotlight on the wonderful stories and journeys of underrepresented individuals doing amazing work in tech and to create relatable role models. So also wearing the hat when it comes to that of editor, podcast host, producer, just really managing all of that stuff. It was quite difficult at first. Finding balance, I would say in general, was very difficult. So for quite a long time, it's that whole idea of wanting to invest in your business and all of the time you have, having so much energy and doing all this work to the point where you almost forget to give yourself some kind of break and release. And although you feel like you don't need a break from what you're doing because you're so passionate about it and so excited and it's so meaningful, you still need to give yourself those breaks, that time for your mind to just recharge, for you to re-energize yourself. So I think that for a long time, I forgot to do that. So I love going to the gym. Love-hate relationship going to the gym. And for a long time, I just didn't go to the gym. I would be working such long hours that I would almost be putting my health and my fitness underneath the priority radar. So it's just aligning and knowing that that also is important. So finding that balance, which comes in time, which comes with feeling more comfortable in yourself, I would say as well, and confident in what you're doing, that balance comes. So that's been a big learning for me, definitely. Also, that balance is super important, and having almost guilt when you did want to take some time off, or if you was having time off, because it's your business and it's something that you're driving. When you're not then investing time into it, there's that feeling like, I should be doing something for the business. I shouldn't be going on this holiday. I should be using this time. And that was more of an internal feeling for me that I struggled with, because my co-founder has always been so supportive in, saying, take these days for you. If you want to go on that hike, go do that. Really advocating that and celebrating that. So that was never an issue. It was more of just that internal battle and feeling. Also, that whole idea of the safety net going away when you're in a job and you have a steady salary and you have a big infrastructure around you and a big support system as such. That can be quite scary to readjust. But that also comes with having the inner confidence and belief in what you're doing and yourself. And again, this is why the self-reflection is so important, because you have to be able to reflect on your strengths, the areas that you thrive, you flourish in the most, to then have a bit more confidence in coming away from that safety net and knowing what you're doing. But it's not easy, and it is daunting at times because you're the one making all of the big decisions. And in terms of what I found maybe surprisingly easy, this has been quite a hard one to reflect on, because there's been a lot of this process, and I don't want to make it sound like this is so easy being an entrepreneur, because there are challenges along the way. But I think truly, because of the co-founder I have in Jonathan, the whole process has felt easy. The mission that we have, because it's such a personal passion and there's so much enjoyment in what we do. Every day I've been waking up and feeling, this is incredible. I can't believe, I actually feel lucky that I'm in a position where I can be doing this and I can be working towards this inner mission. So the collaboration with my co-founder has been incredible. And I really think that boils down to knowing Jonathan for 6 years prior to that inner working relationship. So I would say that's really important for anybody who might be looking for a co-founder. If it's somebody if it's a friend, have you worked with them before? Because that relationship does change from friend to then work relationship.
Super nice advice. Thank you so much, Ellie, and very on point for anybody looking to start or maybe reflect on their entrepreneurial journey. I want to ask you now, because you have had the opportunity to hear and witness a lot of career development together with the setup you have at EqualIT of many individuals. What are some lessons, or what did you learn about how we as in on the other hand of the company side, how do we see our careers evolving? Are there any themes or mottos that you hear or see from the people you work with?
So from a lot of the people that I've interviewed at Equal Inspired, there's a reoccurring theme when it comes to our careers and evolving in our careers. And it's that whole idea of being afraid but doing it anyway. And there's a reoccurring theme around taking charge of your career and how it's going to evolve, and really being proactive in doing that. Knowing that if your career, you want to evolve and become a manager, let's say that's your goal, you have an end destination, knowing that during that destination, there's going to be winding roads, there's going to be shortcuts, there's going to be huge traffic jams that will potentially prolong us getting to that end destination. But we have to try and embrace that as much as we can and take charge of that. And again, this is the whole self-reflection and where it comes in. So that's been a huge reoccurring theme, and why I also advocate the whole concept of self-reflection, because so many individuals that I speak with say that that had really been the game changer for them when they're able to also reflect on what are their weaknesses, where do they need to improve, how can they improve in that, what's the contingency plan that they need to put in place to learn, to grow, so they can then excel in this space. Because unfortunately, as much as we want to collaborate with people, as much as we want to build these meaningful connections, we are in charge of our own destiny. Nobody is going to do things for us. We have to make it happen. So if we can take that power and take action and have that self-assurance, then it's going to help us to evolve our careers so much more. Toju Duke, who I spoke with, she is a responsible AI program manager from Google. She shared a lot around the theme that, as well, the path that you have, your background, the experience that you bring, even if, let's say, you're transitioning into a new career, let's say you want to get into the tech space, but you haven't had that conventional background or studying, you can learn from every experience, every career that you've had. There's skills to take from every single experience. Nothing that you've done is a waste of time. There's always lessons learned, and there's always transferable skills that you can reflect on. And I would say that that's also really important in how we evolve in our careers, because I still to this day believe that there's that stigma, that stereotype that we sometimes hold ourselves back, that we can't be this thing because we make excuses, because we don't have the right background, because we haven't had that educational route, because, we don't know that industry. But the things you have learned in the past, you can apply them for moving forwards and for your lessons. So it's all about just being adaptable, being open to change. Jonah Anderson, who I spoke with also, who is a really wonderful role model, she talks a lot around when it comes to how we're evolving our careers, always being a student of life, always channeling any adversities that we have had to fuel our motivation to do better and to learn from those. So in terms of common themes around how we're evolving and just some advice and some gems from the people I've spoke with, this is what I can share.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Annie. Very, very important to be reminded of the fact that you are in charge of your own setup, and you get to decide some, or if not most of the things. And I think sometimes we forget that. So thank you for that very kind reminder. I want to also speak before we close here about limiting beliefs, because we have connected on this topic before, and I know that we personally spoke about the need to not believe everything we believe and go for it. And you've just illustrated earlier also what did it mean to you and how you decided to start your own company. What's your reflection on the way that we engage generally when making decisions? What can you share with the listeners in terms of learnings here as well?
Fantastic question. And I always enjoy our chats around this, Alexandra, because there's so many layers to it. And we could be here for hours, so I'll try and summarize a few of my points. I feel that at times we can hold ourselves back from making decisions that we internally believe are the right things to do also, because of that fear of judgment externally, maybe. We are perceived to have to potentially take a certain career path, to have to take a certain educational route. And if we don't do that, we get judgments from whether it be family, friends, and sometimes that can be a really heavy weight, a heavy burden for us to carry. And I genuinely feel that even still to this day, it can hinder some of the decisions that we decide to make, and we choose to not really be our authentic selves, to live our careers through what other people want or through what we think other people want to see from us. So that's a big thing that I feel holds us back sometimes in making these decisions. And for example, launching EqualIT, that was a time when COVID was still quite rife. There was a lot of, I guess, people didn't know what was going on, what was going to happen. I, from a personal perspective, had just got a mortgage on my very first home, which is a huge commitment financially. And telling people that I was going to be coming away from a stable wage and launching a business, there was a lot of judgment. There was a lot of, are you sure you're doing the right thing? This seems a bit crazy. You've just got this big commitment. And reflecting back now, I know it come from a place of caring because they just want what's best for you. But that potentially could have hindered my decision to start a business, and I wouldn't be the person I am today. So just trying to focus again more so on what do you want in your career? What's important to you? Why is it important to you? And try to blur out the other external judgments from other people. I feel like also sometimes we feel like we need to have it all figured out. We need to have all of the answers before we do something, before we make a decision. We have to really analyze every aspect. And in some instances that's important, but it's that idea of letting go of perfection and what this idea of perfection is, which is super, super hard to do. I've struggled with it for so many years, but just knowing that every decision you make is going to lead you to a certain learning, a certain lesson, a certain path. You might not get the certain outcome that you want in that moment from a decision you make, but it's going to be a foundation for learning for something else that you're then going to go on to do. So trying to come away from that idea of perfection, because let's be real, does perfection even exist, right? Is that even out there? Some people, I'm sure celebrities who we feel are perfect in every way, I can imagine that if they looked in the mirror, there would still be things that they feel they need to work on. So you never know what goes on behind these closed doors of these people who we see and we feel that they have everything figured out and perfect. Vulnerability and just being open and real is so powerful and so important. And I think that also with the decisions that we make, sometimes as women, we feel we need to show up twice as much to get a seat at the table. So we try and just put our all into these things to the point where we're exhausted and we're not being our true self. We're masking who we really are or what we really want. And when we mask ourselves, we lose productivity by 40%. So these are some of my reflections and lessons.
I love it, and very true, because it also outlines the fact that you've reflected on it, and also it boils down to being who you are to be, successful, because success is at the end of the day, or should be, defined by you.
Yes.
That's something that I feel like we don't, obviously now it's changed, but I used to believe that, validation is important, because otherwise how do you know you've made it if other people don't think that, right? And it's really, I think also the more we progress in our lives, and I know that we've spoken about this, Ellie, privately as well, I think both of us had huge shifts on how our mindset goes around success and development, because it's really a personal journey. And no matter if we say or do things that we believe will make others see us, as successful, if it doesn't make you happy, it really doesn't matter. Like, following up on that, I want to move forward to the final fire questions and close up this amazing interview, because I think you've shared so many pieces of wisdom here that I cannot wait to also hear the feedback for. So, what is one book you think that everyone should read?
So I recently finished reading this book, and I want to recommend this, Better Allies by Karen Caitlin. And I want to recommend that because it's a really powerful tool for anybody to just understand how we can all support one another and be better allies.
Fantastic. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
This is an interesting one. Trying to reflect on all of the advice, I would say follow what makes your heart sing and the rest will find its way.
Who is your role model?
So I actually have so many role models. All of the individuals I get to speak with on a daily basis, the people that I've interviewed, yourself, Alexandra, in my eyes, are all role models. There's inspiration to take from everyone's story. But I would like to actually say that the biggest role model for me is my dad. My dad is somebody who I've looked up to my whole life and really is the reason I am the person I am today. One of the reasons. Very inspirational person in terms of just that resilience, that ability to pick yourself back up, to have the charisma, to be able to communicate really well. So my dad is my role model.
I'm smiling because you told me this the day we met. You've mentioned him as your inspiration as well. And I think that's really fantastic. What would you choose to do if you were to have another career?
So growing up, I actually wanted to be a WWE wrestler. And I played football for many, many years at quite a high level. So I also wanted to be a footballer at one point. Very unconventional from your typical stereotypical girl, let's say. So if I think about those two things now, I'd probably want to be a presenter on like Sky Sports, which is a channel we have in the UK. Something like a sports presenter or present on WWE or something like that.
That's fantastic. I love that. It also fits your personality in terms of bringing all the information together. I think that's really a great alternative for your career path.
Thank you.
If you could change places with someone, Ellie, who would it be and why?
So I would actually say I would love to, for the day, be Calvin Harris because I'd love to experience putting on a huge DJ set in front of hundreds of thousands of people and feeling that energy and just having that experience. So I'm going to say Calvin Harris. If I had to pick a lady, I would say Karen Brady. And I'd love to be her when she is filming The Apprentice, because that, since I was young, has been one of my favorite TV programs. Have you heard of it before, Alexandra?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, these two people.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ellie. This was really fun. I hope you've enjoyed this interview as well. Before we close, please tell people how can they find you and where can they find the podcast?
Yes, so you can find EqualIT on LinkedIn. You can connect with myself, my co-founder, through LinkedIn, Ellie King, Jonathan Down. And Equal Inspire, the podcast, is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. And we also have a TikTok account now where we show all of the gems from the interviews that we do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ellie. I hope you've enjoyed this interview. It was really a pleasure to have you as a guest. And I hope that our listeners will share the feedback because I think you shared so much wisdom and I'm very excited we got to do this.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I've had so much fun, really loved this. And yeah, for anyone listening who is open to seeing how they could diversify more their candidate pipeline or inclusify their recruitment processes as well, please feel free to reach out. Would welcome a chat. And thank you, Alexandra. I really love everything that you do. And like I say, that energy you have to build community and to make a positive change. So you're a huge role model for me.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Thank you again for joining, and thank you everybody for listening to this episode. Stay tuned for more updates with inspiring female role models.
Hope you've enjoyed this episode of FemLead Podcast. Share the news with your friends and follow us on social media at FemLead Podcast everywhere.